There's a lot going on in the sports world right now. Like the NBA playoffs are going on. Major League Baseball is in full swing. The Preakness was yesterday, Indy 500 qualifying, the NASCAR All-Star race. NFL is always at the top of mind. And yet all anybody wants to talk about is Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese. If you haven't seen it, you're probably living under a rock that Caitlin Clark delivered what I would call even maybe just a borderline hard foul. To call it a flagrant foul, I thought was ridiculous. But that's neither here nor there. The reaction from Angel Reese set in motion a very big and interesting reaction from so many people on social media, on TV, that it is dominating the headlines, really. That is what people are talking about, is Angel Reese and Caitlin Clark. And I wonder if there is something that can be taught to college football as a whole about Angel Reese versus Caitlin Clark, because they both agree that there's not a rivalry between them, that they have the utmost respect for each other, has the utmost respect for the other. And yet the actions kind of show that like maybe that isn't the case. But it highlights that sports is a soap opera at the end of the day. We care about storylines. We care about things that we can attach ourselves to. Because if it wasn't that way, and you're just like, I love football, well, then on a Saturday afternoon, you would flip to Army West Point versus Tulane just to watch that game. There's a reason you don't. It's because you don't know anybody who's involved in Army versus Tulane. You don't know what that does or holds for the future of the conference schedule for either of those two, or how it determines the college football playoff, etc. Rivalries matter. And more than that, I think rivalries between people matter, because you can get a Texas is now playing Texas A&M again. And the average observer can look at that and go, okay, I like Texas, or I like Texas A&M more than I like the other. And so you can make that determination of who you like better than the other, etc. But I think it needs to go deeper than that, where we like conflict, right? Like not even just in the sports world. In general, we like conflict. There is a reason that there are shows like Real Housewives of East Jesus Nowhere and the Secret Wives of Mormon Wives, or whatever, Secret Lives of Mormon Wives, or because we like people who don't like each other. We like people bitching at each other. We like that. There's a reason that like the WWE remains popular, because conflict is enjoyable television to watch. For as much as people say that they hate Stephen A. Smith or Skip Bayless, you like watching people bitch at each other. You like people arguing. You like diametrically opposed sides going at one another, which is what Caitlin Clark versus Angel Reese is. It is diametrically opposed, opposite ends of the spectrum going at one another. And that brings in everybody else of which side are you on? Whose side are you on? And I think college football could use some more of that, because I don't think you're going to get that from on the field, because just there's not many that like you're going to get in a spot where, oh, Cade Klubnik doesn't like. There's just not many times that you get a defender versus an offensive player that these are the two at the best of their game and they dislike each other. So it's got to come from the sidelines. It's got to come from the coaches. And I think that that's a good thing for the sport overall. If Kirby Smart and Brian Kelly can't stand to be in the same room with each other, and that's just throwing two people out, right? Like that is, I'm not saying that Kirby Smart and Brian Kelly dislike each other or anything like that. I don't know that there is really a head coach versus head coach situation where it's abundantly clear that these two guys don't like each other, because one, that world is so small that you can't burn bridges. Because if Marcus Freeman were to come out and say like, God, I hate Ryan Day, I hate everything about him, or I hate Sharon Moore, you might need to go work for that guy at some point, or you might need to work with somebody who's on that staff as a defensive coordinator, or you might want to hire somebody at some point. So there's not many times where you get coach on coach trash talk. And I wish that changed. I wish that there was a little bit more animosity, hostility between one another, because right now it's, we've got the utmost respect for them. Obviously this is a heated rivalry, and this is for every rivalry. This is Ohio State, Michigan. This is Texas A&M. This is Pitt, West Virginia. It is everybody. We've got the utmost respect for their program. Obviously, it's a hotly contested rivalry between fan bases, and it matters to us greatly of who wins, blah, 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 blah. Monotone, mundane bullshit. Very rarely is it, we don't like them and they don't like us. I don't like the other guy on their sideline. I think he's arrogant. I think you just don't see that. And I think you need just a little bit more of that in college football because, one, people obviously crave it, whether it's in sports. In the NFL, you get the guys who dislike Patrick Mahomes, guys who dislike Travis Kelce, the players on the Oakland Raiders, Las Vegas Raiders, very clearly don't like the Kansas City Chiefs. Now, I don't think it's all that, like Red Sox, Yankees, Dodgers, Giants. There are some of those, or you see it in the NHL playoffs right now where you play the same team for 7 consecutive games. By the end of that series, you see people who want to punch each other in the face. But those are sports that you are literally going head to head all the time. That's why basketball has an advantage, and hockey has an advantage in that situation where football doesn't. You're just generally not going to have all that many guys who are mano-a-mano. You're not going to have a bunch of Cortland Finnegan versus Andre Johnson situations. Or Richard Sherman versus Michael Crabtree. Aqib Talib versus literally anybody who lines up across from him. You don't get those situations all that frequently. And we've gotten so... we've allowed athletes to now be kind of these personality void figures where, it's bulletin board material if you say that you dislike somebody or whatever. We know what happens. We can handle that. The idea that they're going to talk about it on sports talk radio, they're going to talk about it on First Take if you say you don't like them, so you can't say that. I want Mario Cristobal to hate Dabo Swinney's guts to the point where it's visible and they talk about it. I want Lincoln Riley to hate Marcus Freeman. I want Brian Kelly to hate Kalen DeBoer. I want Kirby Smart to hate Josh Heupel. I want all of those things to happen. I need Hugh Freeze and Kalen DeBoer to be mortal enemies. And we don't get that all that much. And so I think there's a lesson to be learned there of like, hey, you know what? I don't think it's a bad thing necessarily. If you just come out and say, you know what? I don't like that guy. And I think it's okay to not like that guy. There was an ESPN story a few years ago where the Central Michigan staff under Brian Kelly, when he first got to Central Michigan, included like Robert Saleh and Matt LaFleur and a bunch of guys that went on to coach in the NFL. And they told a story about how there was a party at Brian Kelly's house. And they thought they were invited, but no. They were supposed to like park the cars. And they had told the story basically was like, hey, make sure you don't treat people the way we got treated, which is that's a really good way to operate. Hey, treat people better than the way I was treated is an undeniable good way to live your life. But when that story came out and people started grabbing it and running it, they had to backtrack and go, well, that might have been overblown just a little bit. Like, well, it wasn't. You said this story. And I believe that you probably thought I was showing up to a steak and lobster dinner at Coach Kelly's house, and instead he made us stand out in the snow and park the cars. I believe that happened. I do. And so for you to then backtrack because you think it makes you look bad, it doesn't make you look bad. It makes the guy who treated you poorly look bad. And if somebody treated you poorly, it's okay to say, this guy treated me poorly. I think that's all right. To say, hey, we got treated really poorly here. And if that fuels you to then, I don't like this person, I want to beat them, this game means a little bit more than maybe others on the schedule because it will chap my ass so bad if we lose to that guy. I want Dan Lanning and Ryan Day to dislike each other. And I think that's okay. I think we as college football fans, I think sports fans as a whole would like that soap opera-ness. You can argue that you don't, that you just want it to be about what goes on between the 153 and a third yard lines. That's what you want. That's all you care about. But that is not true. The reason that Ohio State, Michigan is the biggest, most watched game every year is not because they are both really good programs year after year. Michigan came into this season stinking. They had a quarterback who couldn't throw the ball down the field, by God, and yet they still won. The reason that it was the most watched game is not because it's going to be the highest quality football played throughout the year. It was not. It is not generally. It's because there are millions of people who know those two don't like each other. And I need to tune in to see what that looks like. And so you get a melee at the end of the game. You get people throwing punches, flags trying to be planted, cops pepper spraying college kids. It's a hell of a sight. And I think despite the amount of people who were like, oh my God, this is horrible for college football. Oh my God, no. How could this possibly? What a horrendous look for the sport. Nah, hell with that. It was great. And I'll die on that hill that it was awesome because that is human nature. That is people who aren't afraid of what everybody else is going to think about them. And I like that. I like people who are unabashedly unconcerned with what the perception of them is going to be. They're going to stand on business. And I think we need more rivalries to stand on business. I hate to tell you the truth. A quote unquote rivalry. And as the game ends, guys are smiling, dapping each other up, chatting about how you doing, how's your mom and them. Dislike it. Now, I don't expect everybody to feel the same way I do, but if you're going to spend all week telling me how important the game is and how you don't like those guys, yeah, you can't be best buddies after the game. There can be respect there. One of us had to win, one of us had to lose. You earned it. Congratulations. It's different than, oh man, I haven't seen you in forever. How you doing? No. I would like more hotly contested rivalries. And after the Ohio State-Michigan melee, there was, I think the temperature needs to be lowered. The hell it does. Crank that temperature up to high and let's do this. Because that, as you see with Angel Reese and Caitlin Clark, when you crank the temperature up, it gets attention. It gets people talking. And if there's no such thing as bad press, hop on that train and ride it. That's just my thoughts. Want to know your thoughts. One, do you think that was a flagrant foul on Caitlin Clark? Because I don't think it was. But do you want to see hotter rivalries contested in college football? Because we can pretend as if it wasn't cool that the Auburn fan Harvey Updike or the Alabama fan Harvey Updike poisoned Alabama's tree, or Auburn. Geez, I'm crying. The Alabama fan Harvey Updike poisoned Auburn's tree. I kind of like it, to tell you the truth. I don't want to get to a spot where it's like, oh, the football offices in Notre Dame were evacuated today because a USC fan mailed anthrax. I don't want to see that, but I do somewhat like that we can get so irrational over the most mundane stuff. Laundry at the end of the day. I think the sport's better for it at that point. That's just my thoughts. Want to hear from you in the comments below. That'll do it for today's episode of the Daily Huddle. Appreciate you making us a part of your day, however it is, wherever it is you're doing so. If you're watching on YouTube, hit the subscribe button. Make sure you get all the great college football content we're pumping out. If you're listening on the podcast feed, drop a 5-star review. It goes a long way in helping out the channel. I'll see you tomorrow for another episode of the Daily Huddle.